People think motivation is what makes you show up. Psychology disagrees completely. Some of the most disciplined, reliable, quietly unstoppable people on this planet almost never feel motivated at all. So, why do we keep telling them they're doing it wrong? That answer will surprise you. We live in a culture obsessed with motivation. Find your why, light the fire, chase the dream until it consumes you. We're surrounded by images of people who bounce out of bed at 5 a.m., glowing with purpose. And we're told that if we just wanted it badly enough, we'd feel that too. But here's what psychology has quietly uncovered. The people who show up day after day, year after year, are usually not the ones running on motivation. They're wired differently. They've made peace with something most people are still waiting for. And science is starting to explain exactly why. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the hidden psychology of people who never feel motivated but still show up. What drives them? What it reveals about how the human mind actually works, and why most of us have been misreading effort our entire lives. Think about the first time someone told you that you just needed more motivation. You probably weren't an adult. You were a kid, staying at homework you didn't want to do, or a teenager who quit the team. And someone, a parent, a coach, a teacher, said some version of, "You just don't want it enough." That message didn't fade. It got wired in. From a very early age, most of us learn a simple equation. Feeling drives doing. If you don't feel like it, the problem must be you. So what happens to the kids who never felt the fire, but did the thing anyway? The ones who sat down and finished the assignment with zero excitement, who showed up to practice flat and tired and stayed. They grew up quietly confused, wondering why everyone else seemed to be powered by something they couldn't find inside themselves. They watched motivational speeches that never quite worked on them. They assumed they were broken. But here's the psychological truth buried underneath all of it. Waiting to feel motivated is not how consistent people operate. It never was. And the gap between feeling and doing isn't a flaw in them. It's the entire secret. Here's something most people never consider. Motivation and action don't come from the same place in the brain. We treat motivation like fuel, like you need a full tank before the engine turns over. But neuroscience tells a stranger story. Researchers studying behavior have found that for most people, action doesn't follow motivation. Motivation follows action. You don't feel like it, you start anyway, and the feeling shows up a few minutes in, summoned by the movement itself. Psychologists sometimes call the waiting version the motivation trap, the belief that you must feel ready before you begin. The people who show up without motivation have, knowingly or not, escaped that trap entirely. And that's only the surface of what's happening inside them. There's a specific kind of inner experience these people know intimately, and it has nothing to do with passion. It's the moment they sit down to do the thing, while every cell in their body is saying no. No spark, no drive, just resistance, and the quiet decision to move anyway. Psychologists who study self-regulation describe two completely different engines that get people to act. The first is intrinsic motivation, the warm internal pull towards something you enjoy. The second is conscientiousness, paired with what researchers call implementation intention, a pre-made decision that removes feeling from the equation. The motivated person rides the first engine and stalls when it dies. The consistent person runs almost entirely on the second. They've stopped asking, "Do I feel like it?" and started asking, "Is it time?" And it creates something most people never develop, a kind of self-trust that doesn't depend on mood. But that kind of discipline, it comes at a price almost nobody talks about. Most people get a reward for effort. They feel the rush, the pride, the high of being driven. The person who shows up without motivation rarely gets that. They do the work in a flat emotional state and walk away with no dopamine parade. Studies on the brain's reward prediction system suggest that highly consistent people often have a blunted response to anticipated reward. They simply don't get the same chemical payoff from the promise of a future win. So they can't rely on excitement to carry them. Instead, they built something sturdier underneath. Where others need to feel inspired, they've learned to act on identity. Not, I feel like a runner today, but I am someone who runs. The action stops being a performance of passion and becomes a quiet statement of who they are. And that shift from feeling to identity changes everything about how the mind sustains effort over time. Here's the part that gets buried. The world keeps telling these people they're doing it the hard way. Find work you're passionate about, they're told. Then you'll never have to push yourself. And there's a villain hiding in that advice. The motivation industry, the endless feeds of fire and hustle and just want it more, has quietly convinced an entire generation that the absence of constant excitement means the absence of fit. So people who are perfectly capable of showing up start to doubt themselves the moment the thrill fades. They quit good jobs, good habits, good relationships, not because anything was wrong, but because they confused the natural cooling of feeling with failure. The truth psychology keeps pointing to is almost the opposite. Feeling is the least reliable part of any pursuit. Building a life on it is like building a house on weather. There's another layer to this, and it runs deeper than discipline. People who show up without motivation are often unusually good at tolerating discomfort, not avoiding it, tolerating it. Researchers studying long-term achievement, including the work behind the concept of grit, found that sustained effort over years correlates far more strongly with consistency than with passion, talent, or intensity. The person who can sit inside boredom, inside flatness, inside the dull middle stretch of any worthwhile thing will outbuild the person who only moves when inspired. And tolerating that flatness is a skill, not a personality. They've trained themselves to stay in rooms that feel like nothing is happening, because they know that's exactly where the real progress quietly accumulates. But even with all of that, the mind still needs a way to keep going when the feeling never comes. And that's where something unexpected enters the picture. For a long time, willpower was imagined as a kind of moral muscle, something you either had or lacked. Newer thinking complicates that. What looks like willpower in consistent people is often not raw force at all. It's design. They've removed decisions. They go to the gym at the same time, so there's no debate. They write before they check their phone, so resistance never gets a vote. Psychologists call this reducing the activation energy of a behavior. The motivated person spends their energy generating feeling. The consistent person spends almost none, because they've engineered a life where showing up requires no negotiation. They're not stronger. They're just not fighting the same battle every morning. And when you understand that, when you see consistency not as a feeling but as a structure, the whole picture of effort begins to shift. Here's the part that gets almost no airtime. These people are often the ones holding everything together. The colleague who delivers whether or not they slept. The friend who shows up to help you move on a gray Tuesday with no enthusiasm and no complaint. The parent who keeps going through the unglamorous middle of a hard year. They don't need to feel like it to be there, which makes them the most dependable people in any room. They've developed a rare relationship with their own word. When they say they'll do something, the saying and the doing aren't separated by mood. And there's a strange freedom in that. They're no longer hostages to their own emotional weather. While everyone else waits to feel ready, they've quietly become the people things actually get done through. So here's the question worth sitting with. What if the most driven person in the room isn't the one with the fire in their eyes, the one posting at 5 a.m. about purpose and passion? What if the most driven person is the one who feels absolutely nothing and shows up anyway? What if motivation was never the engine? What if showing up without it is the engine? What if the discipline you've been ashamed of, the joyless, unspectacular act of just doing the thing, is the most powerful thing about you? People who never feel motivated but still show up have been misreading themselves for most of their lives. Told they lack drive, told they just don't want it enough, made to feel like something fundamental is missing. But psychology tells a different story. Showing up without motivation doesn't mean you're broken. It means you've stopped outsourcing your actions to your moods. It means you've built something sturdier than feeling. It means that while the world waits for a spark, you've quietly become the kind of person who doesn't need one. That's not a lack of passion. That's the rarest form of strength there is. If this video changed the way you see motivation, even just a little, subscribe for more psychology that reveals what most of us never stop to notice. And drop a comment. Do you wait to feel motivated? Or do you just show up? Tell me which one you are.